The term euthanasia, the act of mercy killing, derives from a Greek word meaning good death. Still, there are many issues in debate between those who are in favor of euthanasia and those who are opposed to it, such as those in the American Life League. The issues that are in debate are whether it's morally acceptable, whether a person has a right to decide to choose euthanasia, whether it would affect the patient-doctor relationship, and there's, of course, the fear of abuse. While some are opposed to the idea of euthanasia, others simply view it as helping ease the dying process for those who are going through intense suffering. Euthanasia should be legalized in the United States in order to give people the right to die and relieve his or her suffering, instead of taking unnecessary measures to prolong life for those who are already in the dying process. Euthanasia should be legalized because it's morally acceptable and it relieves suffering. People have a right to ask for it, and legalizing it will help set up rules and regulations so there will be no doubt as to whether it's right or wrong or legal or illegal, and people wouldn't feel as if they have to act in secret. Euthanasia should be legalized because it relieves human suffering. Euthanasia is simply a humane way to kill someone and put them out of their misery. If we can make the choice for animals to put them out of their suffering, then humans should be able to make the same choice for themselves and end their suffering if they are going through a painful dying process. Euthanasia is right to use when a person is suffering and doesn't wish to fight for their lives any longer. Extremes are often taken to ensure that a person's life is prolonged for indefinitely, as long as possible, through the artificial means of respirators and high-tech equipment and life support, and these are even performed when there's no hope of recovery. The author Bloyd wisely states, life cannot and should not be prolonged indefinitely. This is especially true through the use of life support and artificial means of postponing death, which leads to another point, that ending human suffering is morally right. Why should we deny a person's wish to end their suffering if they are, they have mental clarity and understand all the factors that would take place, and they are well prepared to take that step? Humphrey explains that euthanasia means good death for a reason. It gives a person the ability to die with dignity instead of suffering and dying a painful death or lying in anguish waiting for the inevitable. Another reason euthanasia should be legalized is because people just have the basic human right to ask for it. There are constitutional rights that imply this. And while there's no specific law that says man has a right to choose when to die, there are certainly laws in place that indicate that such a step can be taken. And District Judge Barbara Rothstein was the first federal judge to rule that terminally ill patients have the constitutional right to ask for the ending of their own lives. Rothstein states that people have the right to decide this because people have a right to decide what to do to their own body, which implies that people have the right to euthanasia. The author Dworkin says that Rothstein observed correctly that the freedom of a competent person who's dying and wishes to end their own life goes along with the same right of a person to choose abortion. And if we can legalize a woman choosing to end the life of her child when the child has no say, then we should be able to legalize a person who is suffering to end his or her own life. The right to take this action is also implied by the right of patients. The right of patients says that patients have the right to resist medical treatment, and that is a law that's already recognized in the courts. Deftos observed that, from a constitutional perspective, it's pretty much the same thing, that if a patient can refuse treatment, then a person can also can reject life-sustaining medical treatment. They can reject it or withdraw it or have physician-assisted suicide. It all has the same ending result and the same purpose, to hasten death. Because of these other rights that imply euthanasia should be used, then a specific law should go ahead and be set up so that there will be no questions, and the rules can be set up concerning one's own life, and there will be no question about whether it's legal or not. With the legalization of euthanasia, certain guidelines and regulations can also be set up so that there's no abuse, and there's no need for desperation or illegal acts to take place. While some argue that patients could abuse the right to die, abuse can be avoided through certain guidelines being set up to indicate that a person's making a rational decision and not acting out of depression or financial concerns or other petty matters or lack of emotional support. Wanzer suggests that measures be taken, such as a physician first determining that the person is indeed beyond all help and is not merely suffering from depression due to the illness. Other examples of guidelines would be that the patient repeatedly requests to end his or her own life, the patient has clear judgment, not acting out of depression, has an incurable disease and relentless suffering, and there's a doctor's approval and examination that takes place before the act is performed to ensure that the person's in the right state of mind and is making, a clear and rational decision and understands the extreme decision that they're about to make. According to the Oregon Death with Dignity Act of 2002, the most common reasons patients requested to end his or her own life was their loss of autonomy, their decrease of physical disability, the loss of bodily functions, and these are all personal concerns with themselves that made going on living unbearable and made the suffering much worse. The least common reasons were that they were concerned they would be burdens to their family, they didn't have enough money for the treatment, or they had inadequate pain control. And this shows that patients are wanting to give up on life due to their decreased quality of life, not because of petty matters such as they can't afford it or they don't want to trouble their family. They really just don't want to be in pain or suffering any longer and are ready to just go in peace. If actions are not taken to legalize euthanasia, doctors and patients will continue to perform these acts in secrecy and illegally, all the while being in fear of being prosecuted or found out. The decision to die should not be this way. Instead, a person should not have to act in fear and have to know that this is an option for them and that they can go in peace. And that's the way dying should be, peacefully. Euthanasia should without a doubt be legalized so human suffering can be ended when it need be, and people have the basic right to do so, and options and guidelines can be set up to make sure that the person is making the clear and right decision and there's no abuse that takes place. And doctors and physicians would be the ones performing this, so they can make sure that the right decision is being made and it's in the best interest of the patient. Humphrey states that just knowing that there's a way out should things get that unbearable is a great comfort to patients if they reach that point in their illness. Terminally ill patients don't want to have to worry about how long their suffering will go on or how long it'll take for them to die. That should not be the way it should be. If euthanasia is legalized and necessary measures are taken, it will benefit dying patients in our country by giving them the comfort of knowing that there is a way out if their suffering becomes so great, and that they have a choice about his or her own life and that they are in control.